Hey everybody, it's author MD New. Welcome back to my writing tips and tricks for authors. Today I thought we would go over dialogue tags, how to use them, when to use them, and ways to mix up how we use them. But before we jump into that, I'm going to please invite you to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to share this video out there with your fellow authors. The more we get these writing tips and tricks out there, I think the better off we are all going to be. So enough of that. Let's dive into my writing tips and tricks for today, which is all about the dialogue tag. So what is a dialogue tag? Dialogue tags are phrases that are used to break up, precede, or follow written dialogue to convey which character is speaking, making it easy for readers to follow the conversation. The most common dialogue tag is the word said. So an example of this would be, "I hate this store. Let's go to that store across the street," complained Tad. So in the above example, complained Tad is the dialogue tag for that particular sentence. But there are different ways to use dialogue tags. So let's talk about that. So first, you can place the dialogue tag at the beginning of a sentence. So you can say something like, "Jerry teased, waiters love it when you snap at them," right? So Jerry teased, of course, is the dialogue tag. Next up is you could place the dialogue tag in the middle of the sentence, kind of breaking up the sentence and giving it a kind of a little bit of a pause in the structure there. So something like, "Let me take care of that," he offered. "That box looks heavy." So you kind of get a little bit of an idea of when you put the dialogue tag in the sentence that there's a little bit of action there. It just breaks up the dialogue tag, or breaks up the dialogue with the dialogue tag. The other way to use a dialogue tag is to place the dialogue tag at the end of a sentence. And this is really one of the more common uses that most authors will do. So you can have something like, "Can I get you something to drink?" Tim asked. Right? So that kind of, you have your dialogue and then you say who said it from there. Now, when it comes to actually using dialogue tags, I've got some tips for you because, again, if you just kind of sit there and look at, and we've all read books and short stories and so forth where it's, the dialogue tags are very traditional and they're very just one after the other when characters are talking. I said this, he said that, they said this, that type of thing where it's very one-dimensional. So when we come to using dialogue tags, they keep your reader from getting disoriented or confused, which is important, which is why that's kind of one of the reasons why we use them. So here are some of the tips to help you write dialogue tags, as well as some common mistakes to avoid. This is going to give you kind of a mix of how to use them, where to use them, and some things to kind of stay away from. So the big thing is use dialogue tags sparingly. When you have two characters in the middle of a conversation, and it's only the two characters, and they're just doing a back and forth, you don't need to end every bit of dialogue with a dialogue tag. Your reader should be able to figure out from the conversation who's saying what. Now, there are ways to go about this, and you can always throw, especially if it's like pages of dialogue or a couple pages of dialogue or even a full page of dialogue, you can throw in a couple of dialogue tags just to remind the reader who's talking and kind of who's saying what. That way it kind of helps lessen the confusion, but really kind of look at dialogue tags sparingly, especially when there's only two people talking, because you got to give the readers a little bit of credit there. They're going to know what's going on. Now, this one might be a little bit mixed, but embrace the word said, as the word blends into the background and readers don't really notice the word said. So, I don't know about you, but when I'm reading something, I don't notice the word said because it just drops right off. It's there, but it's not. I'm sure I read it, and I'm sure that I read it, and I know that it's there, especially when I go back and look at something. But when I'm reading, I don't typically see said. But the big thing with this, and editors and publishers will kind of get on you on using said too much, is it can be a bit lazy. So you want to vary up your word choice with descriptive specific words. So instead of saying said, you could follow up a question with asked, or if you wanted to pick the person as being really demanding, you can actually say the word, they said, where's my drink? So and so demanded, right? So look at said, look at ways of maybe replacing it and using something a little bit more descriptive, or just get rid of it completely. Because again, you can use them sparingly. The other big thing, number 3, is to use action beats as a substitute for dialogue tags. You can describe a certain character's actions or body language, and it's a great way to make your story more active. So, instead of saying, "Where's my drink?" Tom demanded, you could say, "Where's my drink?" Tom's hands slammed down on the table, right? So we know that Tom said it, and we can tell from him slamming down his hands on the table that he's a little bit irritated or annoyed, right? Next up is mix up your dialogue tags with indirect dialogue. Now what I mean by that is basically what you're doing is providing a summary of what the character said instead of repeating the spoken sentence or the sentence verbatim. And it's a great way to avoid using dialogue tags. So if you come up to a part in your book, and I've done this in a number of my books, where they're having where you know that it could just be this long drawn out conversation of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, you can start the conversation and then jump down and do kind of a summary of the conversation. You can do a little bit of a time jump. You can basically say, the group was planning to storm the castle, and Lord Blaine sat at the head of the table and began, "How are we going to attack our enemies?" Knight Samantha said, "Well, let's start with," and then what you can do is you can give Samantha's little statement there, and then you can say, "For the next hour we discussed going back and forth in different plans, and we ended up with X, Y, and Z." It's just a way to summarize everything and to kind of shorten things up so you're not spending all this time in dialogue, especially if it's not anything that really moves the story forward. Yes, it's going to be important because, in the end, they're going to need to figure out how they're going to go on this adventure or do whatever it is they need to do. But we don't need to know all the nitty-gritty in their conversation, right? So you can kind of condense it all into a paragraph and just say, okay, this is what they did. And again, it's a great way to get rid of dialogue tags. The other thing that you can do, and this is my last tip for how to use dialogue tags and things to avoid, is dialogue tags can be used to express internal thoughts. You can use tags for internal character thoughts depending on how you're writing the story. So some authors will use italics. I tend to use a lot of italics just in the nature of my writing, just because I think it's clearer for the reader to understand that, hey, this is in a particular character's mind, especially if it's a point of view character. But not all authors do that. They will use dialogue tags and without italics, which is totally fine. What it depends on is on your writing style and if you're writing in first or third person. And that's kind of really the big thing there is, if you're going to use italics, you need to kind of figure out, well, okay, how am I writing the story? Am I writing it in first person? Am I writing it in third person? How do I want to do it? So that's pretty much it about dialogue tags. I know this was kind of a little short video, but I do hope that it helps because dialogue tags are important, especially when you go around to editing. You're really going to want to look and see how you can make your story a little bit more exciting, especially around dialogue tags, and getting rid of words like said, especially if you're using them quite a bit. I know it's on one of my lists of words to eliminate when I'm going back and I'm editing. And that way it gives me the opportunity to make it a little more interesting, a little bit more dynamic. I'm also going to leave a link to a really good article that I found about how to use dialogue tags in the comments below. So check that out. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining me today. Appreciate you stopping by. Like I said, this is a short video, so these were my writing tips and tricks for authors on dialogue tags, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care, everybody. Don't forget, oh, and of course, I've been author MD New, so have a great day, everyone. Take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.